Hello, welcome to Maker Kit to Go. In this video, I'm going to show you the basics of weaving using a 3D printed loom and some yarn. Let's get started. You will need a loom, a shuttle, a comb, a needle, and yarn. The first step is to wrap your yarn around the loom to create a base for your weaving. This is called warping the loom, and there are two different ways we can do it. Regardless of the warping method you choose, the first step is to tie a knot. Anywhere on the loom is fine. This is to anchor your yarn. The first method is to wrap the yarn around the teeth of the loom. This method is good if you do not want tassels on your finished product. Make sure your tension is not too tight. Too tight distorts the loom, and make sure it's not too loose because you need the threads to hold your weaving together. When you get to the end of your warping, cut your yarn and tie a knot like you did at the beginning. The other method is to wrap your yarn all the way around the loom. With this method, it leaves plenty of yarn at the end to create tassels on your weaving. I also find this method easier for keeping even tension. When you get to the end, you will tie a knot just like you did in the beginning. Before you start weaving, wrap your shuttle in yarn. You might be tempted to wrap it around the middle, but don't do that because your shuttle will get too wide to fit through the warp threads. Instead, you want to wrap it around on the side in kind of a figure 8 pattern. This will allow you to wrap more yarn around the shuttle without making it too bulky to go through the warp. When you finish one side, turn your shuttle around and continue wrapping in a figure 8 pattern on the other side. It's time to start weaving. Hold your shuttle so that your yarn leaves a trailing end behind the shuttle, and you can either start over, under, or under, over. Either way is fine, just keep that pattern going all the way to the end. When you pull your shuttle through, leave a tail of about 2 to 3 inches to weave in later. When you reach the end, face your shuttle the other way and start weaving the opposite direction. Because I ended over, I'm going to start under, and I'm going to keep that under over pattern going the entire length of the warp. When you get to the end, make sure you don't pull your weft too tightly or else you will distort the warp. Continue weaving until you run out of yarn on your shuttle or you want to change color. And remember to start each new row the opposite way the previous row ended. After you've woven 3 or 4 rows, take your comb, line up the long notches with the edge of the loom and the long and short notches in the center of the comb with the warp threads. And then pull it down to pack your weft threads nice and tight. As you get to the end of the yarn on the shuttle, switch to a flat needle to continue your weaving. Before you run out of yarn, stop weaving and leave a tail of at least 2 to 3 inches to weave in at the end. Rewrap your shuttle and continue weaving. Remember, you want to start your new row the opposite way you ended the old row. If you want to change colors, you will follow the same procedure. You will start the new row the opposite way you ended the old row. As you get to the end of your weaving, you'll notice it becomes a tight fit for your shuttle. Switch to one of the flat needles and continue weaving. When you're satisfied with the length of your weaving, turn the loom over and cut the warp threads along the back. If you wrap your warp threads around the loom's teeth, gently lift the threads off the loom and carefully shift the weft yarn to the ends of the warp. If you still have excess warp threads, you can either tie them into the fringe as we are about to do here, or weave them in as we will with the tails from our yarn changes. After you cut the warp threads, remove your weaving from the loom, remembering to cut where you tied off in the beginning. To secure the weaving and create the fringe, tie together adjacent warp threads. I like to use double knots. And do that on both ends of your weaving. When you finish tying your fringe, you are now ready to weave in your ends. To weave in your ends, thread a skinny needle and going the same direction as your warp threads, you're going to slide the needle in between the weft and go down a couple rows. And pull that out. Snip off the excess, very close to where it's coming out, and your tails are hidden. Once you've got a handle on the basics, there are a lot of things you can make. Besides these flat wall hangings or coasters, you can also make a bag. I have a necklace here and a bracelet. Thank you for joining us for Make Your Kit to Go. See you next time.